Well, good to get back in game week. As I've said a couple different times, right, this is my 15th year entering as a head football coach, and every one of them is uniquely different. Obviously, to be a 3-5 team going into a bye week, there are going to be a lot of conversations from coaches to players to obviously everywhere in between their support staff. But through that into, in all my time being a head coach, I've never appealed a targeting rule all the way to the NCAA. So that was a new process for me. I actually literally met with Josh literally after the game. He got me all the points that we needed to do, made that formal process, and then obviously, as we shared with you last week, got the bad news. But then later on in the week, I saw there was another Big Ten player got so that kind of set my mind wondering if I could go further and appeal further because it happened later in the week, and we don't similar to Iowa had a bye week, so there wasn't an urgency that I expressed at the beginning of the week. But again, that stays obviously in the same situation. I was also working through the Big Ten office literally after the Wisconsin game, or the way the game ended. We had a player catch a pass that I assumed was number 93 for Wisconsin. They have a defensive lineman that wears that jersey number, but that was not the case. When I went to the official stats on Sunday morning, it revealed that a offensive lineman caught the stats, and I didn't catch that because 93, I just assumed when he caught it that was him, and I was never notified of another 93 in the game. So made a pretty formal process to the Big Ten, asked for explanation how that could happen, and that kind of didn't get resolved until Wednesday or Thursday of last week. So that was a huge learning experience, something I've never been through before. Each year kind of brings a new set of circumstances. Then also last week, just dealing with the recruiting process in a 1 week window for the bye week was a lot of travels. I was actually on campus really just for 2.5 days. Got good work with them on Wednesday. Had a really good practice on Thursday to get a little jump start on Minnesota, and then to be across the country and deal with a lot of evaluations. Not really. I was more involved in guys that could potentially be mid-year transfers and whatnot. A couple high school games as well. So just a really busy week, and then to kind of have a moment on Saturday. I got back Saturday about late morning and had a chance to watch college football. Some of the teams we played against, some of the teams we're going to play against. Saw a lot of unusual things happen. Saw a buddy of mine, Dave Doran, get a 100th career win. A guy that he and I shared a lot of time together, and it made me reminisce about getting 100 wins against Penn State. It was just a lot of different emotions to go through it, and then to see the guys in the NFL yesterday, and especially I didn't get a chance to watch Tommy last night, but I was getting a million texts from people seeing him get involved in the game and everything that goes forward. I didn't realize it had been 20 years since an Illinois quarterback took an NFL snap, right? So just a lot of different things. It was I think a bye week always brings a lot of perspective and a lot of analysis. So we're into this game week against Minnesota, a team that obviously has played really well as of late. Played well all year long, but obviously to come out with another win on Saturday to put themselves in the front of the Big Ten West race. But I think this game is really about Illinois, Minnesota. I know that's where our guys are going to take it. We're into a 4-week window that we're going to take it 1 week at a time, and I think we always say that, but I think the reality of putting it in front of them last night, even last week, that regardless of where we're at, to have this 4-week window is truly a blessing. To have 2 home games, 2 away games, kind of know exactly where we are. And to play a Minnesota team that we greatly respect, and the way that PJ's built things around there and been able to handle getting to bowl games every year, and just really impressive group. The same Minnesota we saw a year ago, though it's different face, a lot of the same content. They want to run the football. They're very, very efficient in what they do. The quarterback is really a good game manager. I think their defense is extremely aggressive. Have a couple great players. 27 is a really incredible player. Very impressed with him to watch year in and year out, see his growth, his development, and everything that they have. So a challenging week, and one that we're excited from an injury standpoint. Literally starting to get some of these guys back. Keith, Reggie, 2 of the biggest guys, one on offense, one on defense. I think they'll be with us, but a lot how they handle this week. So they're getting cleared to do more and more. Now it's about how they respond to once they've been cleared, right? And it's been positive at this point. Got a little thin on running backs going into the bye week. There's literally a day where we had to move 2 guys from defense over just so we could practice, just because I didn't want to take a bunch of those guys are going to play for us on unwanted hits, and we want to get good work. So a lot of good growth in the bye week. So with that, open it up for questions and go from there.
Brett, can you share any of the feedback you got from the Big Ten on those 2 issues?
Every week that I usually turn in a couple plays, there's obviously a clapping play that is pretty easy to see. On the big play that set up the game-winning touchdown, the player goes out of bounds, and because it was past the 20, that didn't initiate a substitution, but he then watched the next play. The guy that caught the ball watched the play from the sideline. So obviously I know what happened, right? There was a substitution, but we weren't given the substitution signal, so that made me cause my turnout, so to call a timeout. So after the clap and after that one, I had 2 timeouts that could have been given back to us, which would have had a huge effect. The last play of the game, we saw 93 line up at the tackle. Our players didn't see it because he was covered with a YY. It's a totally legal play. But again, he warmed up in number 66 before the game. So that's what we checked him off in our 2 deep lineup. And when you report into the game in any number other than what you reported in, you have to tell us. We've done it. I bet you I've done it 30 times in my playing career or my coaching career. We did it 4 or 5 times earlier this year when number 5, when Caleb was kicking off, Zach Toby, you literally hear the officials announce number 5 is now in the game. We're in this, so it's very frustrating and had a huge impact on the game, especially with not having those 2 timeouts that I feel were directly resolved or could have been resolved with better management. But Wisconsin won the game, and we have to take the loss. But I was exploring many options to try and get that verified, but obviously don't want to avail.
Difference with Johnny's hit?
Johnny's no, because once it appeals, the Big Ten supported it, and then they sent it on to the NCAA, and the NCAA supported it, and that was kind of the final appeals process.
You mentioned how just having the 1 bye week was different recruiting-wise. So when you just have the 1, and it's maybe at this later point in the season, did you do things differently with your players just because they'd been 8 weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd actually done a lot of things differently the 2 weeks leading into Wisconsin. I thought our guys had played extremely hard through those games down the stretch. So we really wanted to give them a moment. Tuesday, we did a little bit more with our developmental crowd. It was strictly a developmental practice. Nobody took reps on Tuesday that wasn't that was in our 2 deep. And then Wednesday in particular, we had our 2s become 1s and our devos become 3s. We did some more conditioning with our 1s, but we really left our 1s alone. The high rep guys, when I say 1s, it's really the guys that take the large majority of the reps. So like at wide receiver, it was Casey, Isaiah, and obviously PB, so the regular guys. And then those guys on Thursday, we split the practice. So the first half of practice was all Minnesota-driven, and the second half we got a little bit more into Devo and 2s and 3s.
Because of your history, both at Iowa and Wisconsin, do you have a different feeling about Minnesota than maybe a different, another Big Ten school?
No, I think, I grew up playing at Iowa, so that was the first thing, right? It was you battle for the pig, the Florida Rosedale. So I got educated that. Here I was a guy playing at Iowa that was from Illinois, and really I didn't realize at the time everybody brought into that rivalry, right? And it came full circle for me when I was at Wisconsin, and I had a player from Indiana speak about the rivalry of the Paul Bunyan acts between Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I kind of came full circle for me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like seeing an out-of-state player buy into a competitive trophy game that they're not from either one of those states, right? And then when you come here to Minnesota, I think just because of that in my background, my history, and because of Minnesota's success, we'd kind of circled that game as a rivalry game and what it is. I think some of you know this in my past history. So when I first became an assistant coach, everybody would have a family picture, right? And I didn't, at the time, have a family. So I took a picture with the Florida Rosedale in my young coaching career at the University of Iowa, and not realizing the backlash that would occur from Coach Bielema taking a picture with the Florida Rosedale trophy for his family pick was very, very easy spot for haters. So you guys would have loved that back in the day.
Coach, is it an advantage to have 2 weeks to prepare for a team? Do you think that gives you a little bit of an advantage?
So since I've been here, we've had 4 bye weeks. We're 3-1. My first year on the second bye week, we're able to beat Penn State, and then last year we were able to beat Charlotte and with Nebraska. So it's something I've taken a lot of pride in what we do and how we do it, but I think the key is being able to understand that you get a little bit of a jump, but you also can over-prepare for an opponent. I think so that there's a very delicate balance. We kind of did a pre-snap picture of Minnesota last week in our Thursday preparation, but then we let the game play out because we knew it was going to be a good game against Michigan State. Kind of add that into the scouting reports. There's always going to be injuries. Obviously, an emergence of a really good running back that hadn't really been on the scene before last weekend, so things changed pretty quickly.
What do you feel about your D-line guys behind Johnny for that first half and what you guys can do?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. So, Johnny, first off, I know he's probably the most anticipated return to college football second half player than I've ever had in my career. And it was closely followed up by Javita, his mom. I was communicating with her. We obviously are very high on Johnny, but we're also recruiting someone else in that family room, right? So she basically said, well, I said, hey, I did everything I could to get the second appeal, and she said, well, that'll make the second half that much better, right? So I said, I love you more than you can ever imagine. To have a mom say those things kind of puts it in perspective. But yeah, I think obviously Bryce said, really, Keith to be, Keith hasn't been able to play the last couple games. I think so for him to get out there as close as him and Johnny are, that would be a great statement as well. And then, a couple other guys at other positions have really, I think in Johnny's absence, have really kind of felt the pressure to step up and play.
I'm curious the approach you take when there's plays like Johnny getting ejected. We saw him in tears on the sideline. There's you just described the final touchdown. Obviously, these are young guys, and they're just feel like something was kind of taken from them. How do you communicate that to a team?
Yeah. So, in the moment of the game against Wisconsin, I knew obviously as soon as it happened that there wasn't any going back at that moment, right? I asked for basically the explanation, but there was a lot going on in that play. There was not only that, they called it wrong on the field, right? They called it a roughing a passer, and they had to quickly reverse that and turn it into a targeting call that had to get reviewed upstairs. So there was a lot of mechanics that was just off, right? So that was very frustrating. I saw his reaction, and I kind of knew in that moment like he was going to process that on his own way, right? I knew he was going to get a lot of things, and I had a game to manage and move on to. We definitely had a conversation. I brought him in the next day and kind of told him what my plans were, my intentions, told him I was going to do everything I possibly could within anything I could do, and exhausted everything from NCAA and Big Ten standpoint. So that was that. Some of the things that, literally almost a year to date was the Michigan State game where there was a conference-wide recognition of feigning injuries, right? And that was another one where I just felt like this has a huge impact on the game, and it's kind of just retroactively we've been the guinea pig, right? And I pay attention to a lot of different things. So there may be things that I bring up that other people don't, but that's the only way I know how to work. I think the reason our kids play hard right now, when others maybe think that how do they do it, or they're a 3-5 team, or when we were back before we beat Maryland, how do we get to that point? Our kids believe, right? And then they're very frustrated, as fans are, and other people. Like, I can promise you we're 10 times more frustrated. So I think to channel that the most appropriate way and build on it, I've said all along that men are defined more in their moments of adversity than in their moments of success. And, obviously we've had some adversity this year, and really looking for the proper response in the next 4 games, 1 week at a time.
Put so much emphasis this preseason in red area and red zone, and there's a 25% increase this year in touchdowns that you're getting in that area. Are you seeing stuff translate this year when you get down there?
There's obviously offensively that's there, but on the flip side, defensively we're not as good, right? And there's been there's definitely positive things that are happening all around us in individual players and things that we've emphasized. I've seen the growth in our defensive, especially Aaron as a new coordinator. To see, we literally at one point last week had exhausted through 6 running backs. We didn't have our top 6 running backs were not at a practice. We had to pull 2 guys off of the look team on defense to run running backs in practice. So we've been extremely affected at health by certain positions. But as coaches, we have to battle through that. No one is going to be concerned about that from the outside world. I'm not asking. I'm just stating the facts of reality. So you got to focus on the things that we need to correct, but also I think you can't lose sight of, to that point, the positive things that we've said, right? So during the bye week, I purposely kept my coordinators in the office all the way till Friday, and I gave Aaron and Barry specific things on Sunday after the Wisconsin game to take a look at big picture-wise on both sides of the ball that had nothing to do with just the Wisconsin game, right? Like on offense and defense, and they did a self-scout and gave me that information, and we processed that back through, right? So there's a lot of different things going on, and I'm just trying to do everything we can to beat Minnesota, and that's got to be the focus of every person in our program.
What did you accomplish recruiting-wise during the week?
At this time of the year, a lot of it's probably kind of a split between addition and subtraction, right? Like you maybe see something that you saw on film and you get there in person and you don't feel as strong, or vice versa, you aren't impressed as much as you are when you get there, right? 2 tails of the tape, right? Isaiah Adams, I've told this to him, and I'm not saying anything, we did like his film, but it was kind of raw. He was playing tackle, didn't know exactly how big he was. Coach Minnick has been the head coach there forever, and I'd known or not there, but I've known Coach for a long time, both in Illinois when he was at a junior college in Illinois, when he was at Arizona Western. But he spoke highly of who Isaiah was, and then we got there and we were able to see him in person, see a little bit more of practice tape, see some things that you couldn't see on game tape, and I'm like, okay, we're making a move here, and now he's literally could be one of the best guards in this draft class, right? And was a little bit under the radar guy, and to get to where we are now has been awesome. On the flip side of it, there's a bunch of guys' stories you don't know because maybe we were recruiting them, but once I saw them live or I learned something about them while I was there, we can eliminate them. I hit the plane last Sunday, I believe, with 14 linemen that I was evaluating and to be in our program, and I think I came out of it with a list of 8. So we eliminated 9 and added 1. So I felt better there. Now we know where to focus on and get our attention to detail as the next 2 weeks go ahead. So really in recruiting, a little bit of it is, some of the high school stuff, it's kids that are already committed and you're just kind of, following up and doing goodwill. But a lot of it is, for me as a head coach, I was the only one doing this. Everybody else was out recruiting high school players. I went into junior colleges and possible transfer situations.
All good, everybody?
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.